This time in the Magic Kitchen, we are joined by author Lilith Dorsey.
I'm Leandra Witchwood.
And I'm Elyse Wells.
And welcome to the Magic Kitchen podcast, where we talk about magic, kitchen witchcraft, herbs,
and everything in between.
Y'all, it is our 100th episode.
Woohoo!
100 episodes! And we honestly almost missed it. It wasn't until my husband edits our podcast and he was uploading the last one. He said, guys, this is 99.
We're like, what?
Yeah, it is unbelievable.
We made it so far. I can't believe we've made it this far.
4 years. Yeah.
Wow. It doesn't feel like it. Really, it doesn't. It feels like it went by in the blink of an eye because I just don't think that this it's I don't want to say it's a labor of love because it's not really a labor. Like, I don't feel like this is hard for us. Like, we just get together and we chat and have some really cool guests on and talk to them. And it's like sitting around the kitchen table, having a cup of tea and just enjoying some conversations.
Exactly. I feel like it's what I would be wanting to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it is such a privilege. It is such an honor to be able to curate this space. And somebody said something to me. One of our listeners said something recently in our conversations. She was like, the Magic Kitchen podcast is creating a record. You guys are recording conversations with elders. You are bringing up important. Yeah, we are. We are creating like an oral tradition of, like, I think of our episode with Ivo Dominguez Jr. and he's talking about his over 60 years in the craft. And I think of having Chris Penzak on a couple of months ago. Like, he's an absolute goat and he doesn't do a lot of podcasts. Our very first guest was Damien Eccles.
Yes.
And Lori Davis. Like, that's incredible. We are one degree from Peter Jackson.
Well, and think of like the legacies of each of these individuals, not just collectively what we're bringing to the podcast, but the legacies of each of these individuals, like what they've had to overcome, what they have achieved. It's amazing. Like this episode right now that's we're launching today as our 100th episode is Lilith Dorsey, and the legacies that we create with one another and then the connections we create with one another. She'll actually be in the Unbound Priestess Summit, which is happening this week. So if you're listening to this before January 9th, you can still join the summit and listen to her speak more on her tradition, on her path as a priestess and her legacy as a priestess, and how she incorporates this archetype into her work. So it's not just, sitting around the table, having cool conversations with cool people. It's building those relationships, those longevity of, hey, you have a really cool path. Let's share this more with more people. And let's see who else can benefit from your words, from your experience, from your trials, your accomplishments. I think that's what excites me the most, is that we can bring the record. I never even thought of it that way. The record of what the bigger collective community is doing. We are guiding you towards that path that helps you find the right teacher, the right priestess, the right journey for yourself. And to me, that's why I do this, to help people get to where they need to be.
It is my greatest calling in this life to teach. I've known it since I was a small child, and being able now to transmute that, and to be able to host containers and to build community that way. It's been incredible. This podcast, so we want to share some stats with you guys. So we have had 426,000 downloads these past 4 years. We have over 20,000 followers on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And our top episodes are actually the first 3 episodes, which I think makes sense. I think a lot of people like to go back and listen chronologically. So thinking of How Does a Kitchen Witch Practice? That's our very first episode, which I think was a solo episode of yours. Because this is like a behind the scenes I don't think we've ever shared. But when you first launched the podcast,
it was solo.
It was solo. And you were like, just help me research it. And I was doing the behind the scenes work with you. And then I think it's episode 4. We were talking like on episode 3, you were like, I think we're running out of topics. I was like, are you kidding me? Not even close. I was like, I think it's just hard because you're talking to yourself.
Yes.
And then you were like, well, do you want to co-host?
Well,
And
it just made sense. It just made sense because we were already in the conversation. So why not just bring everybody else into the conversations?
Yeah.
And if we're going to sit there and talk about it.
I can't even imagine how this could have been any different. Like it just couldn't have. And it's been so easy. Like I think that's the thing I take away from podcasting in general. Like I have 3 shows now. Like it is truly my favorite thing to do. I love it. And people are like, "Oh, you must make good money doing podcasting."
Nah,
we make $0. We make $0. Like I don't think people realize like when we're like, "Hey, join Patreon. Hey, join the Rebel Mystic community."
That's how we're funding this.
That's how this happens. Yeah, podcasting does not pay money. There's no we don't have sponsors because we don't want to bombard you with that crap.
Right.
Like it's
right. I'm not here to sell you socks.
Yeah.
Or VPNs.
Nope.
I mean, if you want to support us, absolutely. Like so that we can continue with this, so we can make it to episode 200 and, keep in with the reviews, the positive reviews and comments. Like I love reading them. So I have one here. This one's recent. And this listener says, "Hey, I'm not sure if this will work, but I want to say that I'm a relatively new witch or renewed witch. And I just wanted to say that your podcast, The Magic Kitchen, has saved my craft." I'm going to stop there because it's kind of long, but they've been listening for about 6 months. And that to me is why we do this, to give you that inspiration, that perspective, so you can go out and find the teacher that will work for you. So you can find the path that'll work for you. Whether the teachers are us, the priestesses are us, or the priest is someone else and the priestess is someone else, or priestex. I don't want to put gender specifics on that. But what we offer here, I am touched that we have touched so many people. We have so many amazing positive comments from people who are genuinely looking to get something positive out of what we do.
Yeah. And it's been nice. Like my first container, the Witch Codes, wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, just before the holidays in 2024. And it was amazing how these people came into this space to learn about witchcraft from me. But what ended up happening was lifelong friendships were formed. One of the students actually hosted a workshop, and another student drove all the way to go attend it and surprised her at it.
Awesome.
And another student met up with another student in real life, and like they turns out they actually work extremely close to each other.
Wow.
Like these things keep happening, and it keeps happening that way. And in, if you haven't joined yet, everybody, my Facebook group, Seekers of the Sacred Wild, is such a beautiful place. Like the way people are connecting in there, the conversations we're having, it's been so, so cool. Like seeing this genuine, open-hearted support coming from everybody. And it is such a blessing. Like this podcast, we are listened to in over 140 countries.
Wow.
We have, weirdly, we get like good stats in certain countries. Like we were number 2 in Greece recently for spirituality, which I think that makes some sense, but
it does.
Shout out if anyone out there is listening. Message me if you're there, because it's kind of funny. Like we don't check those stats very often because we have to like log into like multiple services to find them. Yeah, and like when I see some of these stats, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Like, so if you are listening, like please send us something. You can send us a text. You can review the podcast. That helps us so much. Like we'd love to hear from you, especially, if you are listening from somewhere where, like maybe you're in the Bible Belt and you don't have anyone around you practicing, at least that you know of. Maybe you are in Croatia or Romania or Bulgaria or Greece, where it can be really dangerous and difficult to practice your craft openly. Reach out. We have so many online spaces because
we do. As
much as it's wonderful to have the in-person connection, and we all crave that, and I hope everybody has that, the online is there instead.
And it's not always easy to find people in your areas, maybe keeping it quiet from family. They can't really practice out in the open. So these online spaces that Elyse and I create and the programs Elyse and I create can help guide you without you having to go and, I don't know, wear the glasses with the big funny nose while you're meeting with this group.
The Groucho Marx.
The Groucho Marx glasses. Yeah.
Incognito mode.
Just so you can practice your craft, because there's still discrimination out there. There's still people who will lose their jobs. I'll be honest. Like I know that when I was laid off from my one company, it wasn't because they needed to lay people off. It was because I openly practiced. And that was the moment when I decided, you know what, I'm done. I'm no longer doing this corporate America BS where I have to hide who I am. And that's when I started really coming out. And that was back in 2008, 2006, 2008. That was like a 2-year process. So like a lot of you out there can't do that. You can't just say, fuck it, I'm going out on my own. You have to work. You have to provide for yourself, and you have to hide who you are sometimes from your employers or your fellow employees, because I don't know, even though snitches get stitches, there's still snitches out there. So having these online platforms where it's more private is, I think, so essential for a lot of us out there.
Yeah. And I have one more review that sort of speaks to that. Like, I feel like what I love about podcasts too, like as a listener to them, is their company, that we keep you company. And people will message me and be like, I just feel like I already know you. And I'm like, well, you do. Like I said this recently on, I forget where I was talking. I think this was on Patreon. I shared a word of the year meditation that I did, and like some of the reflections that came from that. And I will share, the word of the year was authenticity. And that authenticity, I've learned, is actually a protective thing. Like it's a shield in a sense when we use our authenticity, because people can't really get to you if you're completely authentic and in your power with that.
Sure.
And anyway, all that to say, like Leandra and I made a commitment to not do scripts for this show. Like we never used a script. Like, sure, we always, and that's the other thing is like, we will read the book. Like we're not going to have an author on that we're not going to read the book, that we're not going to have questions based on the reading. Like it's truly authentic because we're reading books because we want to read them. And then we're having these authors on the show because we respect them.
Because we respect their work. Absolutely.
As peers. And it's so beautiful to have that symbiosis of trust. And I think authenticity is at the core of that.
Absolutely. And yeah, I've always been the kind of person that's what you see is what you get. And here we are. We're still here 4 years later. It's amazing.
It really is. It really, really is. So this last review we'll read for you all comes from Apple Podcasts, and their name is Sure Jonesy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's always funny because I think most of us make our Apple ID names when we're like 15. So they end up being hilarious and strange. So shout out to you out there. They say, I work from home. It's super quiet. I love having this playing while I'm working. It's like I'm back in the office in my cubicle listening to others while I click away. The guests that they have on are so knowledgeable, and my to-read list is ever growing because of that.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yes.
Same.
Yes.
It's insane. And actually, as we speak, we're looking over the catalogs for all the publishers we work with for 2025. And it's going to be a good one, y'all. It's going to be a really good one.
There's a lot of good ones coming out. So we're going to have some good conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hope you'll stick around for them. Yeah. And if you haven't, please leave us a review and share this podcast with anyone you think would love it, because it helps us get to that episode 200 that I really, really hope we hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to connect more with some of our previous guests and hopefully upcoming guests, if they agree to be on the show, check out the Unbound Priestess Summit, which is happening January 9th and 10th.
Yep, I'm there. And I'm also speaking at the live panel on the 10th.
Yes.
So you can come for the Q&A.
Yeah, we have Wendy Mata, we have Lilith Dorsey, we have Tanae Stewart, like all these really great names, great people who are also seeking to do what we do, and that is educate and uplift everybody that wants to follow this path and wants to just be more connected. This is why we do it.
Yep. And on the 21st, it looks like we might be changing the dates for the Red Thread, but we're going to start the third week of January. Join me for the Red Thread if the Dark Goddess is calling you, and set up a call with me. I've got a link on seekingnuminate.com/the Red Thread. You can set up a 30-minute call, totally free, and we can chat and see if it's a good fit for your path. I would love to connect with you and hope to see you there.
Yeah. And if you're also looking for an initiation program, that's one of the questions I get a lot is like, where do I find a coven to work with? Where do I find a program that gives me that solid path that I can follow? I am opening up the Gardens of the Mystic, which is in total 18 months, but I chunk it into 6-month periods. And I have a few more spaces for the live version, the live guided version. If you're interested in that, we start that January 16th. So 2025 is going to be like the year of the priestess, the year of stepping into our fucking power.
Yeah. Yep. Unapologetic. And purely authentic.
Yes, absolutely. So we hope we see you in the containers we offer.
Lilith Dorsey, MA, has focused their practice on Celtic, Afro-Caribbean, and Indigenous American spirituality. They are filmmaker of the experimental documentary Bodies of Water and choreographer/performer for jazz legend Dr. John's Night Tripper Voodoo show. They have authored Voodoo and African Traditional Religion, 55 Ways to Connect to the Goddess, the African American Ritual Cookbook, Love Magic, the best-selling Orishas, Goddesses, and Voodoo Queens, and the award-winning Water Magic. Visit them at lilithdorsey.com. Thank you for being here, Lilith. This is such it's an honor to have you in the Magic Kitchen and to get to share your work today.
Oh, thank you. I am so honored to be here. I've always had a magic kitchen from when I could, climb up on the stool and help my Nana cook and everything like that. So I'm all about the magical kitchen.
Awesome.
Yeah. That was both of our favorite surprise in your book, which we're talking mostly about tarot every which way today, but we're going to be going every which way with the conversation, I'm sure. But I loved that you, the way I would recommend this book in a sentence, my elevator pitch for it would be that when you get that card that just keeps showing up and you're like, how do I connect more with the message? This is the book to go to, because you dive so deep on each of the major arcana and then each of the suits in a way that is approachable and manageable. You have a lot of headers, which makes it so bite-sized and less what is tarot? But it also is so fun. You have so many hands-on ways to get to the cards and get into the cards. And the recipes were so good. I have so many saved on my phone now. I took photos and put them in my recipe album.
That's fantastic. I love it. Well, it started because I was trying to find a way to sort of get the meaning of the cards to somebody who doesn't necessarily understand in a traditional way. I was doing a reading for somebody whose son was special needs and nonverbal and a teenager and, had a lot of angst and was lashing out. And these cards kept coming up for them. And I was like, all right, well, maybe they don't understand the cards, but they'll understand if you cook this food for them. They'll understand if you make this, aromatherapy blend for them, or you put this crystal under their bed. And it really helped them a lot. And I just started thinking about, well, wait a minute, how can I explain these things to somebody who's maybe 3 years old? They don't understand what the Emperor's card is, but they understand what it's like when they put a piece of rose quartz in their pocket and they take that with them throughout the day. So it was about backing it up and opening it up in both ways and making it accessible to absolutely everybody.
I love that. And I think the idea of the recipes, because coming from one kitchen witch to another, I think food is just so universal. It is cross culture. It is worldwide. We understand food. We understand what it means to come together, to sit together, to enjoy a meal together, to prepare a meal together, to lovingly prepare our ingredients, to, you know, to be intentional with the food. And I think that was such a great part of the book. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. No, it's so important to me. You know, like I said, I've been cooking my whole life from when I could stand up at the counter, you know, and my daughter, she actually does consulting now for restaurants and things like that. She's worked for David Chang and Danielle Boulou. And like, so we got like, she went to Cornell for hospitality, you know,
Excellent.
so like we got the executive kind of cooking thing going on. But it's so important to me, you know, that it's just everything for us. You know, it's everything. Everybody has to eat. We got to eat 3 times a day. So why not make it magical? Why not make it experience where you're taking something away in addition to the physical nourishment, you're getting spiritual nourishment and guidance from it.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. And it's so important to not have the mentality. Like, I think it's great culturally, collectively. Like, I think we're moving away from the idea that like our magical spiritual practices exist in this little box on the full moon only, and then we go back to work. Like, we're recognizing more and more collectively that magic is in every moment of our lives if we choose to make it so. And the kitchen is the place to start because it's what we do. We are going to be eating anyway. So why don't we just stir that clockwise to invite abundance? You know, it's the smallest things.
Really is.
Yeah. Yeah. People always say to me, oh, well, they don't have time to do magic. And I'm like, well, you're doing all these things anyway. You've got to literally stir the pot. So why not stir it to bring in something good? Why not stir it to remove something negative from your life? Why not have those intentional moments when you can? And I think it just improves your life in every way, you know, because you're connecting with the goddess, you're connecting with spirituality, you're connecting with the ancestors in all those little moments. And all of that energy is there to help you if you remember it and you know, try and access it when you can.
Yeah. And for me, it's always about nourishment. Even my magical practice, spiritual, food, it's nourishment. We have to nourish ourselves so that we can do the work we're intended to do in this world. And when we are rushing through our practice and we're not enjoying it, then we're missing something. And I think when we do the intentional stirring, the intentional chopping our vegetables and cooking our food, we're dropping into that space. It's a different mindset. And it's just a shift, just that tiny shift that we can do every single day. Even if you're just sitting at lunch at your job and you're eating your food, you can do it with intention and bring magic into that small process. I love that perspective.
No, I agree. I mean, for me, it's all about flipping the switch. You know, I had a lot of trauma. It's hard to get away from negative thoughts and stuff sometimes. But this is intentionally focusing on something positive and sort of drowning those other negative things out. And that's going to help. It's proven. You know, when I wrote my book about water magic, I talked about the scientific studies where just saying positive things into your water charged it differently and made it more nourishing for you. So, you know, science has proven this, and magicians knew it all the time anyway. We witches were like, oh, yes. Surprise, surprise. No
Our
surprise.
ancestors knew.
Yeah, definitely that it's there. So, you know, that's what we have to do for ourselves. You're right. It is all about nourishment. So many times when I'm doing readings for my clients, it's about self-care, nourishing yourself, stop doing for others. And it's so easy to get in that mindset. You know, I mean, I was a single mom. I had, you know, I was going to school. I had all these things going on, you know, but if I didn't take that time to take care of myself, then the universe will make you stop. And you don't want to have that happen.
So it's always the worst possible way.
Yes, definitely.
So, how did you first get into tarot?
I think I was like every teenager out there. You know what I mean? I liked the boy in my freshman class, and I was like, oh, does he want to kiss me? You know, things like that.
So cool.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of people have that story. You know, my mother had, and I didn't realize it until very recently, she had a first edition Thoth tarot, like And I always loved books. I loved the beauty of them, the illustrations, the intensity of it, the magic held within. So she had this hardcover first edition, and I would take it down and look at those pictures, look at those beautiful illustrations. And again, when I was about maybe 12 or something, I got a Rider-Waite Smith deck, and I was just all about the readings, reading for everybody. My best friend was a witch too. We were the only witches in our high school, so we would just do readings all the time. And I think that it was a little obsessive, yes, because that's how teenagers are, hormones, but in a way it allowed me to be interactive with the cards and really know the cards and understand them, because I was working with them several times a day. I was working with them. Okay, what's going to help me study for this test? What's going to help me get into this after school program? What's going to help me do all those little things that I was trying to influence, because I'm a minority, I'm tiny, all of those things that, again, made me get on the struggle bus from the very beginning. So it was always very hard to navigate. So I think that the cards were a tool that I picked up probably as early as I could, and really started learning how to use them to help me get over those things that were more challenging for me.
Yeah, that's such a powerful reminder that at its core, tarot is here to empower us. Like, I think people are afraid of tarot. Like here in Greece, people are terrified of tarot. I only read at a couple festivals a year here, frankly, because nobody else will accept my application. They're at that level quite afraid of it. But then there's a couple festivals. One of them I'm on the board for, so I got to accept my own application. Yeah. The Athens Irish Festival. And so I read with some Celtic inspired decks. It's nice. So even though most people come with like a gimmicky attitude, they're still quite scared. The first question that I get asked is usually, "Are you going to tell me how I die?" Which is a very Greek thing, because in the coffee reading that they do, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Greek coffee. Yeah. It's that very slick, sludgy, I'd rather not drink. Yeah. But it is really effective for readings. That's the only time in my life I will imbibe. And that's pretty much its function, is when will you die? When will somebody you love die? And when will you get married or divorced? It's always like just the major junctions, it's like our town, the divination system. And then they also are afraid that I'm using demons to get the answers, which is always something. So have you ever had that situation? Like, have you ever had to figure out how to relieve fears from somebody who clearly wanted the reading? They're there, they're sitting in front of you, but they need to ground out of the fear.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I talk about it in the book. It's very simple to just, again, set your intention for the reading. It's not going to tell you anything you can't handle. It's not going to tell you anything you don't want to know. You're in a respectful relationship with the cards, and they're here to help guide you. And if we start out and just take a moment to say that, I think that helps a lot of people get away, from their fears, their things like that. The demons is, Hollywood stereotype. We even just had that Tarot Hollywood movie that was all about like creepy horror stuff and everything. And it's just such a shame to me that something that, it started as a game. But then we discovered it could also help us grow and learn and understand things about the future and ourselves. So it's a beautiful thing. It's not something that's scary. And, don't start, none won't be none. Like if I'm not calling in demons and I'm doing my protection stuff, then they're not going to be there, So let's just leave that the same way that you're not leaving your door open to maniacs all the time. I'm taking care of my protection. I'm doing what I need to do to keep myself safe. And this is a safe space, and it's going to go how I need it to go, not necessarily how I want it to go. It's not always going to say you're going to marry the rich man who's going to love you forever. And, but it can tell you how to find the best partner for you, or the best job for you, or the best home for you, and how you can be the most successful person you can be.
I think that's great. Happy New Year, everyone. If you are listening to this the very beginning of 2025, welcome 2025. I look forward to an amazing year together, and I have a couple of really special treats for you. First, January 9th and 10th, 2025, I am hosting the Unbound Priestess Summit. This is 2 days jam-packed with discussions on the priestess path, the leadership path. And this is really for those who are called to step up into a leadership role, especially as we face some uncertain times ahead, to help our communities come together with coherence. So if you're interested, check out the link in the show notes and get your free ticket to this 2-day summit. There will be self-paced options as well as 2 live panels, one each day. I look forward to seeing you in the summit and experiencing this together. Blessed be. So I'm horrible at tarot. I've never been able to learn it. I'm so overwhelmed by it. What advice would you give someone like me who just cannot connect with it? Maybe I don't even get readings from others because I'm so overwhelmed by it. But I love the art. Like I love the art. I love looking at the cards. I love the symbolism and the meaning behind them. But I'm so overwhelmed by them that it's just too much.
I mean, I would just, I've got a lot of different advice. This is what I love about the book. I had advice from interviews that I'd done on my blog for the past 10 years with different top tarot readers and witches and things like that. So I've got all their advice, but my best advice is just pick a card. And like I said, there's crystals in there, there's scents in there. What card is going to help me today? I mentioned before the Empress. If the Empress shows up, take a piece of rose quartz, put that in your pocket, see how it changes things for the day, see how it helps you. If you're having a stressful moment or whatever, take it out and hold on to it. One of the simple, invocations I like to do is just breathe on it, because that breath is coming deep from in ourselves over the past, week or so, everything that we've turned and everything that's become part of us, and we're letting that out, and we're giving that over to the crystal to help us. So something like that. If crystals aren't your thing, pick the scent for it, pick the essential oil and try that. If herbs are your thing, pick the herb for it and put some of that in your pocket, or maybe plant that in your garden that day and see how it feels when you walk by that plant. See how it feels when you see that plant flower, all of those kinds of things. Just approach it in a different way. I mean, I love the art too. And everybody keeps asking me, is there a deck that goes with it? And I'm like, why would there be a deck? There's so many decks out there, Somebody posted the other day about the Chester Cheeto deck. I was like, do you get orange fingers after you read with it? I don't know. So strange to me. But, there's a deck out there that you'll love. And there's a deck, my friend Hansa O'Leary did a World Spirit Tarot, that there's also a coloring book. You know what I mean? So if you're enjoying the art, find a coloring book that goes with a tarot deck that you like and color it in and try to connect that way. I think putting more of yourself into it and less of this is what the book says will help you understand better what it means for you, because ultimately it's not what the book says. It's what it means for you. And they're going to mean something slightly different for everybody that picks it up.
Excellent. Yeah, that's helpful. Like maybe I'll have to try and take in some of those recipes that you put in there, because you have a lot of great recipes.
Yeah. I tried to put in all of them. A friend of mine's doing a tarot speakeasy in a little bit. And I was like, oh, I want to bring the fool's deviled eggs, because that way everybody will have a nice journey and a nice beginning and be able to enjoy the speakeasy and the atmosphere, things like that. Something's starting, something's beginning. What's the fool recipe that you like? Or it's a family affair. What's the Empress recipe that you like? Or you're going on a journey. What's the Chariot recipe that you like? All of those things you can use to help with your day-to-day life and the things that are happening for you.
So with the recipes, and I also loved you had musical notes for each card, correspondences people don't always think about. What is something really unconventional that you've done with tarot, or that you would recommend we do with tarot?
I've done everything with tarot, really. I mean, I take my cards everywhere. If I'm going to a sacred site, I just mentioned I just came back from Africa. They came with me to the point of no return where the slaves left and got on those ships. And we did a ritual for them there to give them the energy of my ancestors and that history and that past. So I did that. I used to be a deadhead back in the day. So I used to do readings in the parking lot for hundreds of people. I thought I was going to pass out because I did, I think, 200 readings in one day. It was crazy. So I've done just about everything with them. But I think the ones I like the most are the creative things that I do with them. I talk about doing a tarot vision board. So, if you're getting this card over and over again, or there's a card you really want to connect with or something, take it out, what things go along with that card. Make yourself a vision board, put it up somewhere where you can see it day to day, or you could do it virtually, make a Pinterest vision board. I have those too, where you're just like, oh, if I'm thinking about this card, I'm going to go look at these beautiful images. I'm going to experience them just from a visual perspective, and they're going to just inspire me through little bits during the day when I need it.
This is a secret ad, only meant to be heard by those who can hear it. This is a spell, my hand reaching out for you to take hold of the red thread of the priestess. The red thread is a 9-week journey into the sacred lineage of Inanna, Isis, Aphrodite, Mary Magdalene, Ishtar, Cybele, and others. Together, we will walk the spirals of their stories, exploring their power as both love and war, creatrix and destroyer. These goddesses call you to step boldly into your own power, to embrace your role in weaving a new era. In times of upheaval, their wisdom guides the way. The thread is waiting. Will you follow it? For more information, visit seekingnumina.com/theredthread.
Yeah, I think my favorite tip you had in there, which I don't know that it falls under unconventional, but the way you had meditations to go within each card. Like I teach intuitive tarot, so I help people learn the cards first from a bonded perspective, build a relationship with their deck, and then go to the book for help, because people think of it as like a rote memory exercise, and that definitely turns them off. And I get why. I wouldn't be able to do it if I approached it that way, So I always say that to them. I'm like, okay, pick a card. You can do this in a magical way or just choose the one you like and meditate within it. Get yourself there. See yourself. Like I loved the magician one because it was like, come to the table. There's a sword, pick it, or an athame, pick it up. There's a wand, pick it up, lift it over your head. And you can actually physically do it. And if you have those tools, you can really do it. And it's just a reminder that these are an expression of human experience. They're arcane, but they're not foreign. They're things we go through every day. Sometimes we go through the whole hero's journey of the major arcana in a day, it feels like, on some days.
No, definitely. And I really wanted to include that. And that was one of the advice that some of the other, famous tarot readers had given me. Oh, well, you have to have the meditations. You have to have this kind of journey work with it. And of course, that's where I started my magic, doing this kind of journey work, because then again, it is coming from you when you're picking up that wand. What does it look like? Your subconscious, your magical deeper self is going to say, that's a birch wand, that's a pine wand, that's a hawthorn wand. And it's going to be different for every person, and what it looks like. All of the things that are in the card are going to look different and personalized for you. So, I start out very simply with, stepping down the steps and seeing yourself going the steps, and then opening the door into this tarot card. And what you see there is what is there that's meant specifically for you. So I just love that exercise because it really allows people to get in touch with their inner selves and their subconscious mind and where their personal power and magic lies.
Yeah. Something I like to do with that exercise is to try, because I write sacred poetry. So like I'll have the card in front of me and meditate with it, do some breath work, and then just start writing and seeing what's the poem of that card. And people do this with art too. I would imagine that would work if, words aren't your interest if you're listening to this. Because the cards are really, there's so much more than cards. And I think people also feel like if they don't have a goal of reading for others, or if they feel like when they read for themselves, it's obscure, that like, what's the point of reading for tarot then? Because it's like, if I don't want to be a tarot reader and I don't feel like I can trust my own judgment on my own readings, why would I need to understand the cards? But I think that's kind of the wisdom of them, is that they hold the wisdom for anything you're going through. And there's so many ways to engage with that wisdom.
Yeah, definitely. I belong to a poetry group here called Esoterotica, which is sort of erotic poetry slams, and they always have a tarot theme, and it's always really well attended and everything. And this year I got to do the High Priestess, and it was great because for me it was not just a meditation on the card, it was a meditation on the goddess in all her forms. I got to talk about Isis, I got to talk about Astarte, I got to talk about Marie Laveau being this high priestess of New Orleans and walking through the streets. So it was so beautiful for me to be able to bring that to other people. And it was funny, like the audience, they're like, who's a professional reader? And it was me and my friend Juliet, and the rest of them were not that familiar with tarot. So it was really interesting to me to be able to see how it could manifest creatively and the impact it had on the audience that wasn't necessarily intricately attached to tarot on a day-to-day basis.
That is really interesting. Actually, kind of in the same vein of art and collaboration, I wanted to ask about your experiences with the Melonade Stand Tarot that you talk about in the book.
Yes, it was wild. I mean, she's very intuitive about her readings and things like that. So there was a little, and I ended up being the Hierophant, and there's a reason because, again, like, I appreciate and value that thing, but then there's also part of me that's like, well, we can't have a Hierophant card if I don't have like a key. You know what I mean? There were things that I really thought needed to be in the card. So we had a little bit of back and forth, but it ended up coming out really beautifully. It was an honor to be in that deck. That was maybe, I don't know, probably about 6-7 years ago now, but it was beautiful to have an all Black person deck, which there weren't that many of them at that time. It's a photographic deck. So that was really amazing. And some of the top people, both at the time that have gone to super stellar stardom with tarot now, like Tatiana Tarot was the empress and she was pregnant at the time and things like that. So it was just so beautiful to see all these melanated faces in the tarot. And I really loved it. And I'm also in the Tarot of the Boroughs, which is a all New York City tarot, which was and I'm the High Priestess, which was so special to me because, I was friends with Margot Adler and she's in the original New York City tarot as the High Priestess. And I was like, yay, Margot and I both get to be the High Priestess in New York City. It was so sweet, but that was really cool. I remember showing it to my best friend and I can't remember, I'm sure this is going to come back at me, but I can't remember if it was like the King of Cups or the King of Pentacles or something like that. She was like, oh, I dated him. He's a Satanist and was really kinky, so it was really funny because it was great. People we knew from the community in the deck. So it wasn't just, this is what the meaning of the card is. It was, oh, I know this mofo. I know what he's like. Here he is on this card. It was hilarious. So I love that deck. Yeah. So funny. Yeah.
That really speaks to as well, like what you were sharing in the book about, like, see how the cards are actually talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does this one relate to that one?
Yeah, definitely. So again, it becomes beyond just this, like you said, knowledge that you're supposed to memorize from the book. It's like, and one of my dear friends was a Voodoo priest and he's in the deck and he's no longer with us. So now it's like this way when I do readings, it's like, oh, he's coming to tell me this message or warn me or help me about this situation, so it really has become a fusion of both the meaning of the cards and the individuals who were represented in it. Moby's in it. Like that deck is just nuts. Everybody's in this deck. It's crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of cards. 78 cards. That's a lot of places to pull from. And it's interesting too how, like, I've never thought about a photo deck. I don't think I have any photo decks, but how would you compare the experience reading with a photo deck versus like an art-based deck?
I like the photo decks. I do. Like I said, it's different. And usually when I'm doing readings for other people, I give them a choice of all the decks to use. And they almost always go back to the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot, which is the one I've been reading with probably professionally the longest. I'm friends with the authors. Louis Martinet has been my priest of the Voodoo Spiritual Temple here in New Orleans for probably 25 years. Sally Ann Glassman, who did the art for it, she just went to Africa with me. We're part of the New Orleans Voodoo Day committee. So it's like, this is my friends made this deck, but I use it all the time. So I like the photo decks, but I think they're much more specific and good at dealing with specific situations, not like a general reading. You read professionally. Sometimes people just sit down and they're like, I don't have a question, just tell me whatever. The photo decks with individuals, it's harder to get meaning out of when they don't have a question or they don't really have any guidance. I tell people it's like a doctor. You don't just walk into the doctor's office and go, tell me what's wrong with me. You got to at least point to something, point somewhere and tell me what I'm looking at, And that allows me to sort of open up what's surrounding that situation or that issue that you're dealing with.
Yeah, that is true. I get that a lot too, where people just want like a checkup, which I have a spread for that. At this point, I've like curated one that's sort of like looking at their roots of self, working in how each element is present in their path right now, and then giving advice for hard times and for the general times, like what's something that is for you in this moment. But yeah, I've been thinking about the decks I read with professionally, and I pretty much only read with the Wildwood Tarot because that is the one that I found first that connected with me. I was one of the very rare people who Rider-Waite-Smith did not resonate. And it's crazy because like Leandra, I love the art. I would happily have it on my wall or on my t-shirt or anything. But for some reason, the cards themselves just didn't resonate the way the Wildwood did, which is a super complicated deck. Like people who have picked it up are like, I don't like it. It's weird. It's like Five of Cups is ecstasy.
Well,
that's different,
Yes. I could see how that
makes
works.
sense to me because it's catharsis.
It is.
Exactly.
It is.
So it's there, but it is a different approach.
Right. And each deck is going to give you a different approach. That's what I like about it. I talk in this book how when I started, I always used the Tarot Compendium, which is sort of a compilation of 13, 14 different of the top decks. So that allowed me to at least see the range. But if you looked at like the little keywords, there's probably 200 keywords for each card. So that's a lot to process when you're doing a reading for somebody. And ain't nobody wants you to go like, oh, well, could it be this? Could it be this? And that's where your intuition comes in. I'm really big on things like that. And sometimes you'll get somebody that has a really difficult situation that they don't want to talk about. And for me, in that moment, I always say it. And no matter how wacky or crazy or extreme it sounds like, it's always right, So you just have to trust yourself sometimes, too, that knowing that whatever's coming through, there's a reason for it, and I apologize sometimes, oh, well, I'm sorry if this isn't what's happening, but what I'm getting is this really extreme, dark situation. And then, they're like, oh, yeah, how did you know that? And I'm like, I wish I didn't sometimes. But, if I'm here to help you, then I have to know it. Again, like a doctor don't want to look at some ugly, nasty thing on your, whatever, but they have to. It's their job, okay. That's their job. Yeah.
The Gardens of the Mystic program is now available. You can apply to join the live program or you can join the self-paced program. Right now, we start our lessons and our group mentoring on January 16th. So if you are interested in this, do not wait to get in. If you want more information about it, check the link in the show notes. And I have an entire page that'll tell you all about it. So I look forward to seeing you both in the summit and in the Gardens of the Mystic journey so we can work together to build a better tomorrow. Blessed be.
So if somebody's new to reading for others and they're really, nervous and they want to prepare what's your advice for somebody about to start reading for others? Not necessarily professionally, but in general.
Just relax, it's not stressful. We already talked about it's not going to tell somebody if they're going to die or whatever if they can't handle it. Some states it's even illegal to tell them that even if you did see it. So it's not going to tell them that if they can't handle it. So that's good to know. And then just have fun with it. When I was starting, I used to trade readings a lot with friends, and sometimes it was a little intimidating because some of my friends were, professional magicians that had been reading for decades. And I was like, oh no, I'm reading for the big high, magic person who's been doing this for decades and is famous. But it's still, you're going to see something that they maybe didn't see, or you're going to see something that another reader wouldn't see. So just trust yourself, have fun with it. Like I said, trade readings. So then at least that way you can see what they see about you. So it's sort of mutual. So, it's a balance and a give and take. I'm really all about energy exchange, and I don't like it when people ask for things and don't give anything back. So, even if you're just starting out, it's good to have something that they're giving back to you for this reading.
For sure. Yeah, that's great.
The other thing I like to do too sometimes is I like to do a reading that, okay, this reading's going to come from the ancestors, or this reading's going to come from this specific goddess. So that sort of removes it from my hands. I'm sort of asking them to help with the reading and them to guide the reading. So then it's not just me pulling it out of my own mind or my own psychic energy. I'm connecting with this other energy that's helping with the specific reading.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I do a grief and loss reading sparingly, I've learned. Because it's heavy, and it's only 7 cards, but I channel about midway through, I start to channel their loved one that they need to reach out to. And that was a big exercise in trust, because sometimes I would get a name or a way that they died or a direct phrase that they're saying, and they're saying, tell her this. And if you're wrong, that's so much responsibility.
Yeah.
And knock on wood, I haven't been yet.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a challenge of the closing the energy at the end of something like that, because I want to give honor to the spirit who came through. I don't want to just shut the door in their face, but I also need them to move along with the person they came with. Do you have any advice for that, for the energy protection element of readings like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm not really good with dismissing anything either. We don't do that in African traditions. I kind of ask them nicely, what would they need to continue to help this person? I'm not capable of continuing to have you here with me in this space. I also tell all spirits, energies, ancestors that I work with that I have office hours. So this is, you can't be knocking on my door at 3:00 I tell humans this too. You can't be messaging me at 3:00 in the morning. I'm not available for you at that point unless it's a real emergency. And even if it is, what am I going to do most of the time? So, okay, if you want to contact me, if there's something else you want to tell me, you can show up between 9 and 9:15 on a Thursday. So that way they know they have that access to you again later, and they're more likely to move on right now in this moment. And then you just got to remember from 9 to 9:15, okay, I'm open for whatever messages are coming through this week that they want to tell me.
Oh, I love that. Office hours for the spirits.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's really good.
I mean, everybody does it. Again, we do it in the real world. Why shouldn't we do it with spiritual things? Your professor's not going to let you show up at 3 a.m. at their house. I have a question about this. No, like they'd fail you and throw you out of university. So, there's times for these things. And, the spirits understand that,
And I think that's a good point to make, because I think a lot of people forget how much power and control they have over the presence of spirit. I had a reading recently where she told me, like, if you thought the downloads are bad now, just wait. They're going to ramp up in the next few months. And I'm like, great, because 3 a.m. isn't enough. Right. And it was a reminder that I need to set those parameters of I'm willing to receive messages here. And okay, out of all these that you gave me, I can work on this one. So we're going to focus on this one right here. That's what we're focusing on. The rest is going to have to come later. And I think that's such a great reminder that we have that kind of control over the downloads, over the messages that come through, over the spirits that come and want to talk to us, because they can get chatty.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was doing a reading for a teenage girl who was just inundated with messages all the time. She was in an old house and somebody had told her to put crystals along her window. And I was like, but then you're just inviting everything in all the time, and she couldn't sleep. And I was like, okay, well, first we need to get you to have a good night's sleep, first of all. So that's your time. If you can't, like we were talking about self-care and nourishing, like you need to be able to have 6 to 8 hours that are just yours. So start with that, put salt water under your bed, do the crystal grid around your bed to make sure you're safe and nothing's going to get in. And then during the day, if there's something you need to know for your parents or your brother or your sister or your friends, then you can deal with it at an appointed time.
Absolutely. I like
On
that.
that same vein of spirit communication, what are the ways that you use, if you do, use tarot to commune with spirits? Like I've seen people doing spreads for like, they move to a new house to get the ghosts to come through and talk, or any way that you've used tarot for spirit communication.
I mean, usually there's some sort of indicator. I don't seek it out, the same way I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm shy, right? Like even when I move into a new house, like if I see my neighbor, I'll be like, hi, but I'm not knocking on their door. Hello, it's Lilith. Here's the thing. I did that once to my neighbor, and that little kid opened the door, took the plate of cupcakes and closed the door in my face again. And then those neighbors never talked to me again. I was like, okay, I guess they wanted some cupcakes. But so if there's something that's going weird, like stuff's dropping off the walls, or there's noises, or there's weird stuff going on, then I'll do a reading to figure out what it is that is happening with the house or happening with the situation. If my candles are burning black, then do we need some protection? Do we need a cleansing? Is there something that needs to move on? So I'll start with cards. Sometimes I'll also use dowsing rods too. I'm really fond of that, or a pendulum or something to see exactly where it's coming from. And I tell everybody to get a good yes, no. You can do it with the cards. You can also do it with a pendulum or dowsing rods. Is this going to help the situation? Is this going to improve things for both you and me to make it easier to continue to live in this space? Like I said, I'm not about moving them on. They were probably here way before I was, and they'll be here long after I've left. So, but I remember reading something ages ago from, I think it's called The Secret Life of Plants. It's a book, and it's about how they dealt with their organic garden, and they just had like a 1 square foot of space that said, okay, bugs, stay in this space, and I won't kill you if you're in this space. So the same deal of like, okay, this is your space. You can hang out in the top corner of the bathroom shelf. That's yours. I won't mess with you. I won't do anything. That's your space. I'll leave you a glass of water or whatever up there every once in a while. But the rest of this home is my space. I'm paying rent right now or mortgage. This is my space for this amount of time. So you can have that tiny space. I'm going to have my space.
I think that's similar to the conversation I have with the spirits in my house. Like, if you're not paying the rent, you're not paying the bills, don't come crowding my space unless you have something useful to tell me.
Yeah, that's it. That's where I'm at with that. I mean, you wouldn't accept it if it was a human, some homeless dude showed up. This is my house now, like, sorry, sir, like I have this deed to, this is my house, is what this says, I'm sorry you think it's your house, but right now it's my house.
It's not happening.
Yeah, not happening.
I love that you said you're not about making them move on, because I completely agree. I came to the witchcraft path as a paranormal investigator first. Like I was a witch on my own, and I was very in the broom closet, and I thought, okay, I'll be a paranormal investigator and use my witchy ways. But the paranormal investigation world is very separate. Weirdly, I don't think it should be, but it's quite separate from the witch world and even just the spiritual community. So I found myself just kind of choosing a side, I guess you could say, but not all the time. I do work with the paranormal still, and I host ghost walks when I'm in the States, in towns that I have experience with. But people always ask that. They're like, okay, are we going to cross over spirits? And I'm like, probably not, because it's not really our call. Like I call it ethical ghost hunting in quotation marks, because hunting is such a cruel word.
Yeah,
but
it is.
People want that experience of spirits, but it's from such a strange perspective. I've never understood why it got
There's a
so
lot
aggressive.
here. There's a lot of fear, I think. I mean, I think a lot of people I talk to are just freaking out, and I'm like, why are you freaking out? Like, that's not necessary. They're here. Their energy's here to do what it is here to do, and your energy's here to do what your energy's here to do. It's not an oppositional thing. It's not a thing to be afraid of necessarily. I mean, there's bad people and some of them are not alive. That's just a fact. So we have to deal with that sometimes. Hopefully we're smart enough not to, build the house on the Indian burial ground or something like, poltergeisty or whatever, but we do have to really understand the way things work. And I am just very respectful of all of those energies, and like I said, if I've done my homework, hopefully my house is where it's supposed to be and there's no negativity that's directed at me there. And we can live in harmony.
Beautifully said. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your work in Benin I know we talked a little before we recorded, but I want to share it with folks if you wouldn't mind, because it's sacred places. That's my thing. Seeking Numina is my business, my Instagram handle, all that stuff, because Numina is sacred places. And I feel like the sacred places of this earth have so much to teach us, whether we can travel to them or not. And it's important that people know that. And Benin is one that doesn't get its due in the mainstream world. So I'm excited for you to share what you're working on.
Yeah, definitely. I just can't, when we're recording this, not when it airs, but when we're recording this, I just came back from Benin to give a lecture at the Voodoo Colloquium, which was part of their first inaugural Festival de Masque. And this was just sort of a celebration of Vodou culture in academic ways. The colloquium had over, I think, between 60 and 80 presenters giving papers and things like that. Most of them were both academics and also spiritual practitioners from all over the world. Benin is French speaking, so there were a lot from Haiti, Martinique, all Francophone Africa and things like that. There were a couple from the US. I went with my committee from the New Orleans National Voodoo Day, which we created to sort of mimic the Voodoo Day in Benin, where they get over 2 million visitors. They go along the slave route that people were forced to travel before they were put into ships at the point of no return and sent off to all parts in America and the Caribbean and things like that. So it was really powerful. We went, the colloquium was amazing. I got to give my workshop paper presentation. We went along the slave route. We did a ritual at this huge mass grave for unmarked slaves that they don't even know who's in there. They just sort of cemented it over and put up an art piece there. So we got to leave offerings and candles and sing and just sort of thank them and honor them and things like that. And that was beautiful. We got to go to the point of no return where I mentioned, where they've put up a huge art monument to represent the gate that was no return. They got on these ships and they didn't come back. And our event here in New Orleans picks up at the Mississippi, where the first slave ship docked in Louisiana and they got off, and it touches on all these other spots along the way that had significance for them. And then we have a ritual in Congo Square, which was the site of rituals for Marie Laveau and, both enslaved and free African people for hundreds of years. People still have ritual there today. So it was just beautiful to be able to go and experience that. We met several, priests, babalawos, Odu practitioners over there, the upper echelon of the Vodou society. We were treated amazingly. So it was just so beautiful. It was like a once in a lifetime experience. I am making a short film about it. So that was great that a lot of people supported me, that I could, do all of that and get some footage and be able to share it with people. We went to, you're talking about sacred sites. We went to the Temple of Pythons, where in Benin, the python is sacred. So in Benin, you can't kill a python. If you find it, you have to go bring it to the Temple of Pythons. They have their own house there. It's not locked. They can come and go as they please. So they let you hold them and leave offerings for them. And once a month, they take them out into the wild to eat. And then they all come back to the temple on their own afterwards. So it's just so amazing. Cool. It's so amazing. The people that are dedicated to the pythons, they have special scarification on their face. That's like 3 lines on one side and 2 on the other, which if you look at a python has those indentations naturally on their face. So at the temple, there's all these people there that have been dedicated to the pythons their whole life and supporting the community, and they do rituals there and stuff like that. So that was phenomenal. We went to the sacred forest where they have different statues and like all these sacred trees for wishing and honoring the different Vodou spirits. And it was just so beautiful. Everybody was so lovely. And I had such a great time, such a great time.
Amazing. Wow.
And I just think of as you've been speaking, I've had like waves of goosebumps again and again, because it's such a full circle moment for your lineage and for America's lineage, and healing that is nowhere near completion, but you're doing it. Like you're part of that mass healing that is so needed.
Yeah, it was so important to me to be able to go and to be able to support the New Orleans National Vodou Day mission and to be part of that. And every time, it makes me cry every time I say it, but so many of the people of Benin said that, like, we see you as our children that was lost to slavery. You were taken away from us and sent across the waters. And it just makes me want to cry, you know? And the day we arrived, the senator who was in charge of the colloquium told us they had hasn't been signed yet, but they just passed a bill that anybody with African DNA, African ancestry is allowed to apply for citizenship in Benin. And they did it that, you know, it doesn't matter how small a percentage, because they know that so many of us were, you know, our African heritage was diluted over the years. So anybody who can prove any percentage is allowed to apply for citizenship now. And it made me so happy. I mean, actually, so many African newspapers now going, this is great. I want my Benin passport. I want to connect with, you know, the parents that I lost, the heritage and the family that I lost for all those years, and be part of it and be part of something that's just so beautiful and so powerful and so strong. You know, Vodou and witchcraft, even to some extent, you know, it's better than it was 30 years ago, but it's still very demonized and very persecuted and stereotyped and all of those evil things here in the US. And it is not treated the same way over in Benin. And it's just beautiful to me to be able to be in that culture where it's celebrated and accepted and out in the open.
Yeah, that got me too, actually, because I'm thinking about, my dad's family, and I'm not very connected to my Egyptian side, like sort of by design. But most Egyptians today are colonizers in Egypt, and there is a native people, and they were mostly converted to Christianity, but so long ago, before most books of the Bible existed, and the Bible's very different there. And they speak a language called Copt, which is it's an ancient language. It's older than Aramaic. And that's where my family's from. So I have a lineage of refugees again and again and again in every way. And even my dad, even when I was a kid growing up after 9/11, there was just this reminder that, like, you can be Greek, you can talk about Greece, you can, My Big Fat Greek Wedding is on, that's funny, haha, but you are not Egyptian. That's not who you are.
Right.
My dad legally changed our last name, so it was less Egyptian. And there's so much wounding in Africa and so much healing, but I do see it being done. And it's just amazing to be in this age of Aquarius where these things are being ushered in and supported. There is nothing but cosmic support. And I feel human support. I feel global support around this reculturalization. Was ICC there? They're the International Cross-Cultural Committee. Do you know if they were present?
I don't know. Everything was in French and I don't speak French. So it was, you know, 60 papers that I didn't understand, although my French is getting way better. And hopefully it'll be really good by the time I go back again to take part in the celebration. Yeah.
Well, I'll send you their website because they are doing unbelievable stuff around the world and just basically supporting individual, like, you know, they call it, they usually use the word ethnic, which has a connotation in the US, but indigenous religious traditions. They're helping people revive them from everywhere from like Armenia to India, which India is a huge supporter of it because Hinduism survived, you know.
Right.
I always remind people, like, there are polytheist countries. They're just not in the West.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, it's It is
No,
a
it's
global
true.
movement. It's amazing.
That's fantastic. No, I would love to hear more about that. It makes me sad. It makes me sad about how things are in the US. My father went to the Million Man March, which for those who don't know was, a million Black men coming together in support of African heritage. And they marched on Washington. And he said it was great. There was drumming and there was everything like that. And then they would ask him what religion he was. And he said it was okay as long as he told them he only had one God. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So again, it can't be, we can come together in solidarity and culture and heritage, but we have to deny this part of our heritage that was, pantheistic and did honor the spirits of nature and everything. And he thought that was really interesting. And I think it was really interesting too. There's still such stigma and stereotype around it. And that's been my life's work, just trying to change that, not just with my writing and my blog and things like that, but everything that I do.
Yeah. And you do. You really do. I so mean it. It is such an honor to have you here and to be face to face with you. You said you were friends with Margot Adler, and I had this out of body experience because I remember reading Drawing Down the Moon and just wanting to meet her. And I looked at the publication date. I said, oh, she should still be alive. And I looked it up and I just sobbed. I was so sad because she was taken infinitely too soon.
Definitely.
And so many of our elders are, and we cherish you. We really do.
Wonderful. It was just the anniversary of her death a few days ago. She was just so wonderful and so iconic. And I don't think any of us would even be having these conversations if it wasn't for Margot, and so together and so respectful and everything that I try to be, really, I think so. We before we started the actual taping, we were talking about how important it is to lift other people up and to remember where we came from and to help others and to collaborate and all of those things. And I think a lot of the younger people today are sort of missing that point. It's all about me, and I'm so great. And, screw you gatekeepers and all of that, which is not what it's about.
Yeah. That brings me to
go.
I know, as a white woman, it's hard. I can't understand the struggle that's there. I understand it on the pagan aspect, but I will never fully understand the struggle. So the best thing I can do is give people who do this a meaningful work the platform, the Here on the Magic Kitchen podcast, and supporting you guys as much as I can so that I am part of the healing process. And that's my goal. What would you recommend to someone like me who comes from an ancestry that my ancestry, they owned slaves, but they also were abolitionists. So it's that double-edged sword of, I want to be part of this healing process, but I also recognize the trauma, the damage that was done. What do you recommend to someone like me who does the ancestry, realizes, oh crap, that shit happened and I'm not okay with it? How do we heal it as far as going forward? How do I support you if I was just an everyday person that didn't have something like the Magic Kitchen to allow you to voice your position and your community?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of ways to help, no, everybody doesn't necessarily have a podcast that they can turn their platform over, but everybody can leave a review. Everybody can share the work that is being done. Everybody can help and volunteer in ways that are whatever ways they can, something. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a monetary donation. It can be something of support by sharing it on the internet or by commenting or liking. All of those things make a difference. The world is built on some sort of unknown algorithm at this point, right? But if enough people get behind it in whatever way, then that'll help people who do have that message for healing and reconciliation and all of these things, and to move it forward, to really move it forward in all the ways, in all the things, and I think people don't think of that as something, oh, well, I can't give money or I can't do this, but they can do things. They can do things that don't cost any money. They can do things that are just supportive or just helping to listen, right? So many people told me, especially about my books that are about voodoo or whatnot, well, I'm a white person, I can't buy that. I was like, I wouldn't have written it if I didn't want people to buy it. And so many of us were forced to learn European history growing up here in the US and Europe, but people don't know anything about African history. People don't know anything about African spirituality. So I think everybody has a duty to learn more about that, because it's a huge hole in people's knowledge. What they know about it came from Hollywood, and we know that that's fake and not factual. So everybody has a duty to themselves and to the world to understand what the truth is.
Yes. Oh, mic drop. It's about education. Yeah. It sounds so, people are like, oh, that's it. I can just read books. I'm like, it's not just reading books. It's that you will read the books or listen to the podcasts or watch the documentaries or whatever, and you will internalize that and you will start thinking about it. And then the next time you're in a conversation about, should we teach critical race theory in schools, blah, blah, which that's the whole thing. You can actually hear what they're actually saying, which isn't, should we teach this thing that has this arbitrary name we came up with as a buzzword? What you can really hear is, why are we being told not to share the full picture of history? And that is it. It's a spark. It's an ignition. And then you can have a rebuttal that is educated. And then you can find ways in your friend group to talk about what you're learning. And it just ripples and spreads. Like we talk about it in the spiritual community. We're the collective. We have to heal the collective. Well, the collective isn't some ethereal concept. It's every time we open our mouths to talk to another human. And every time, like you said, we open our ears to listen.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I'm not necessarily somebody telling me, thank you for calling me in instead of calling me out. Somebody said that this morning, and I'm all about calling people in, like there are things you can do. I'm oh, you're doing this wrong thing, because people aren't trying to hear that. But I can say there's things that anybody can do. There's things that, is so important, not just for the elders in the community, but for the young people in the community. We have to break the cycle of these things. When I started in the community, people would say voodoo is evil and try and shut down my rituals. And we almost got thrown out of an event once for playing rock music. And I was like, what is this? Footloose or something? Like, what is this? Is crazy. Like, I don't know what's happening, So, but that's the way it was, when my daughter was little 30 years ago, it's just that's just how it was. So things have changed since then. And I'm hoping they would still change even more, that people understand that, oh, it's okay to have drumming. It's okay to have dancing. It's okay to have these things that are non-traditional ways of worship, because the reality of it is these are traditional ways of worship. It's just not Christianity and mainstream Christianity in that way.
The Wheel of the Year Book Club is open for new members. If you would love to join a witchy book club with other wonderful witches to get to know, join us on Patreon at the dedicate tier or higher to participate in our book club that meets every 6 weeks around the Wheel of the Year holidays. Our next book is Consorting with Spirits by Jason Miller, and we will be discussing that on February 13th at 7 p.m. EST. I'd love to see you there. Visit patreon.com/Elyse Wells to join.
Where can people find out more about your work? Where can they buy your books? And any continuing work in Benin as well? Where can they keep up to date on that?
Yeah, definitely. They can check out my website, lilithdorsey.com. My books are found anywhere books are sold, online, in stores, all of those things. They can find my books, and please leave a review and all of those things. They can check out my blog, Voodoo Universe, which is the largest voodoo blog in the world. And I am going back to Benin, hopefully pretty soon after this airs, for Voodoo Days in January. And we have our own New Orleans National Voodoo Day that is here in New Orleans. It's going to be April of this year. You can check out our website. Just Google New Orleans National Voodoo Day and you will find it, or you can find us on social media. And I'm in charge of the colloquium. We're going to have a day-long colloquium full of professors talking about voodoo and voodoo throughout the world. It's also really important to me to have a kids program. So we have some amazing kids authors, coloring book authors, dancers. There's going to be a full kids program for them. And then the next day is going to be the ceremonies and the offerings, as I mentioned, starting at the Mississippi and going throughout all the sacred sites in New Orleans that had importance for enslaved people and ending up at Congo Square. And the head of the Voodoo Colloquium in Benin, Hungan Kappo, is going to be doing our ritual. That's what he said, in Congo Square. So we will have a Beninois priest there to do the offerings and the ceremony right there in Congo Square. It's going to be legendary, and I hope everybody can come.
I am going to look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally now, and put the date on my calendar and manifest that, because that is, oh, that's cool. That is really beautiful.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it, and it's coming together. It's a lot of work, though. So, we need volunteers, we need help, we need chairs, we need all of those things. But it's amazing to be part of something that is so healing and educational and everything that I think is important to really help people that need it right now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, this was wonderful.
I love how this conversation progressed. It's going to be hard to come up with the title for this episode.
Oh, whatever. Whatever you want is fine.
Lilith Dorsey changes the world, maybe.
Yes, I like that.
I try. I tell you. But thank you so much for having me on. It was a delight. You were both fantastic, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Merry meet,
Merry part, and merry meet again.
Thank you for joining us on the Magic Kitchen podcast. Please visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com, for news, information, and more episodes.
I'm Elyse Wells, and I can be found at Seeking Numina on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and seekingnumina.com. That's Seeking, Numina.